When needing to adjust tensions, first take a look at your stitch and determine what is off. Now, before you adjust any tensions, make sure that everything is threaded correctly, meaning there's no extra threads wrapped around other parts of the serger that they're not supposed to be at. Check back here with your threads where the spools are and make sure they're not hooked underneath. There is so many times that is, well, the issue, and it's pulling one of the threads to the wrong side because it's really, really tight. Now, I'm going to go through a couple different things that will change when you see different tensions. Now, if you're using the same thread all the way across, same brand of thread, you're probably going to notice you can just keep your numbers all the way at 4. And by the way, if you happen to have little fingers that like to play with the dials, no problem. Just put them back to the number in the middle and start there and test on your fabric you're working with how they're going to look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the first thing. I'm going to loosen up the needle thread down to 1. So the lower the number, the looser the tension. Higher the number, the tighter the tension. And I want you to see what actually it looks like when you have no tension on the needle thread. So first off, we actually have not a straight line next to the lower looper thread. Now I know this is yellow, but you can kind of see that there's some loops there. That's because there's nothing holding it, and when you go to open it up, you really have a seam that pulls apart, and that's definitely not what you're looking for. So oftentimes, keeping in mind, tensions for needles are much tighter in here. Even though the numbers are all the same, these are a tight tension. Oftentimes, people don't get that thread all the way down into the tension disc. So before you start tightening anything, make sure that you can't see the needle thread down through the tension disc. In other words, make sure your presser foot is up when you thread the 2 needles, because then the disc open, accepts the thread, you lay it all the way down there, and I usually hold it and then lay it nice and tight. That makes sure it goes all the way down into the proper place. But for any reason you see some loops, you could start to tighten that a little bit to tighten it up so it doesn't pull apart when you open it there. So I'm going to put that back to 4, and now let's go ahead and let's just tighten the lower looper just for fun. We'll just run another little seam through here. By the way, sergers are meant to run fast, so the faster the better. Okay, now on the front, everything looks really good. So we've got our 2 rows of stitching from the needles. The upper looper goes across. On the back, the lower looper is pulling the upper looper around the edge and back here. And it's also, because it's tight, now it's pulling on that needle thread, the one that we just loosened, but put back to normal. So it's actually kind of pulling it from both directions and leaving us with a little bit of extra opening there. So by that being a little too tight, which it is, if that was the case, you could just go ahead and loosen it up. Go ahead and do a number or 2 when you have something that really needs to see some change, and that should take care of it. Vice versa, if we tighten the upper looper, this one doesn't always show as much. Let's see where we're at here. Do you notice I just cut off the same amount of stitching each time? Now this one, again, it's rolling a little bit to the front, not a bad thing. Tensions on the back look nice and smooth, so we have a nice open seam, but you know, it's not as pretty. So if you were helping out, say, a 4-H student for a competition, they might dock the student by not having the tensions balanced on the serger for their project. So kind of keep in mind you want those right along the edge when you are getting them balanced out. So there's 2 things. If you have this as an issue, the upper looper is too tight, because we know that we tightened it. But if that was at 4 and everything was at 4, you could do a little of both. You could loosen the upper looper and tighten the lower looper just a little bit. And what it'll do is, like scales, balance it back out to that edge. You probably won't have to go very far. But sometimes instead of just tightening one more and more and more, go ahead and loosen the other one. So that gives you a nice balance instead of just a cranked up tension to get the result you're looking for. So go a little bit taller or higher, tighter, and a little looser on the other side, and that will roll it to the other. So once again, if you are having tension issues, you've got good quality thread on, your machine's clean, keep in mind you might just cut all your threads and rethread it and see if that will solve it. Many times that has solved serger problems I have run into when I can't spot what the problem is at a glance when everything looks like it's threaded correctly.